Hi, team, and welcome to our first podcast on our next president, 36th President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Today, we're going to be talking about his presidency, who he is as a person, and just introduce him and what he does on the home front so that we can have a better understanding before we discuss Vietnam. So, LBJ, obviously, as you can see from his resume here, is very qualified. He was the vice president of JFK, and that's how he becomes president of the United States, is after JFK's assassination. LBJ is, as you can see with the picture here, he's very animated. He's very outgoing. He's from Texas. And they talked about how when he spoke with people, it was called the Johnson treatment. He had this reputation of being like really overpowering and intimidating. He loved to invade people's personal space. He would sit in the Oval Office with his dog and they would howl together. He was super persuasive, very personable, very charming, but he definitely rubbed people the wrong way at the same time. He's aggressive, he gets things done. And Johnson is going to be tasked with following through on Kennedy's legacy. Kennedy had really wanted to complete a lot in the civil rights movement, but he's not going to be successful in doing so because of his assassination. LBJ will be president from November 23rd in 1963 through the end of the term in November of 1964, where he will run for election himself. And he's going to use what we call the DAISY ad. This DAISY ad is posted to your document, and it's something I'd like for you to look at. And I want you to think about how they use this ad in order to play on people's fears, especially during a time like the Cold War. So this ad was used to promote LBJ and his run for presidency in 1964. Johnson's going to run with Humphrey, and they're going to run against Barry Goldwater. They're going to use phrases like LBJ all the way, and if I were 21, I'd vote for LBJ, trying to get people to vote for him, and it's going to be successful because he will become the next president elected on his own in 1964. Kennedy has a plan. He wants to tackle the war on poverty, and he creates something known as the Great Society. He talks about how our society is dependent on the federal government to make sure that we enact laws and legislation to make sure that we are taking care of the poor, right? JFK asked what people could do for their country, and LBJ is saying if people are going to step up, we have to also give people opportunities to not be stuck in poverty as well. So we create something known as Medicare and Medicaid. So think about caring for your grandmother and aiding the poor. So this is health insurance for both the elderly and the poor. Head Start is going to be an opportunity for children like in the preschool age to get school materials so that they're not walking into kindergarten already behind with their ABCs and their numbers and handwriting, things like that. So we're going to get an education system together to make sure that if you couldn't afford nursery school, because nursery school or preschool is not free, that they had opportunities to resources to be able to keep up with the rest of their peers. He's going to create the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is going to be working on low-income housing, making sure all people have access to a stable place to live. And then he's also going to create the Job Corps. The Job Corps is much like the Peace Corps, except it's going to be domestic. It's going to be within the United States, training 16, 18, 21-year-olds with the skills they need to be good and solid workers. So Job Corps is going to kind of supplement from some of the skills that people may have lost. He's also going to be looking at how do we make our environment better? Working on the quality of our air, the quality of our water, also the Highway Safety Act. So because we put up the highway system so quickly under Eisenhower, we need to make sure that we have on-ramps in certain areas so that ambulances can get there, police officers can get there, heaven forbid there were to be an accident. And then we also have the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, making sure that everything that's labeled within our society has proper nutrition labeled on there, list of ingredients, looking at the most common ingredient being listed first so that people know what they're consuming and how it's going to impact them. And the last and probably biggest things that Johnson is going to cover that we'll go into more detail with in our civil rights movement is going to be the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Acts of 1965. So the Civil Rights Act is going to talk about how all people are going to be treated equally under the law, that there cannot be any loopholes, there cannot be any exceptions. And the Voting Rights Act is going to make sure that all people have access to their right to vote. So we cannot put anything in place that would prohibit people from being able to vote based on their race. So it couldn't be based on literacy or based on location or owning property. is a right under the Constitution that people have access to be able to vote. And Johnson's going to make sure people have that access. All right, so we'll pick up more with Johnson in the Vietnam War, but this is just a few examples of what he does on the domestic front, so you can see what he does in the United States, and then we'll elaborate again more on him in the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, all right, I hope you have a great night.